I, 35 male, met my now soon-to-be ex-wife, 33, during uni 12 years ago. She already had a kid when she was 19, but the dad left as soon as she started uni. We were dating for 3 months before I met her daughter Lisa. I remember seeing her family for the first time. I was nervous about meeting her parents, but I was confused when I saw a little girl beside her mom. I asked her if that was her little sister or a cousin, and her answer shocked me. When she told me that that was her daughter, I thought I misheard her or something. At first, I wanted to dump her for hiding something so crucial from me, but she kept on begging me to stay, and eventually I relented. Soon enough, I started to fall in love with her daughter and wanted to be her father figure. Our bond grew stronger over the years, and in early 2019, before the global issue, we got married. In late 2021, I adopted Lisa, and in early 2022, my wife gave birth to our son, Mark. After my son was born, my wife chose to stay at home for the time being, and I was completely fine with that. Everything was going perfectly until a few months ago. I started noticing my wife increasingly spending time with her friends. At the time, I didn't say anything, since in my mind, being at home all day probably meant eating at her, and I didn't want to seem controlling. Her constant texting and going out of the room for calls made me suspicious. She never did that for anyone besides this one friend of hers. I asked her about it, but she gave me vague answers about gossip. The moment that took it too far, though, was when I came home last week and saw her outside talking on the phone. This wasn't out of the ordinary. I remember seeing my son on the floor crying alone. I was angry at my wife for just leaving him alone in the house, but when I went to pick him up and smelt the horrible stench coming from him, I was beyond furious. His diaper seemed like it hadn't been changed since that morning. I quickly changed his diaper and rushed outside with him in my arms. I was beyond angry. I snatched her phone from her hand and bolted back inside. I locked my wife outside to have a talk with this friend of hers alone. I had my suspicions about who it really was, and when I heard a male voice calling out her name and asking who was there, I immediately knew what was going on. He ended the call as soon as he heard my voice. I then locked the front door to ensure my wife couldn't enter the house at all, took screenshots of as much of their chat as I could, and then sent them to myself before deleting them on her phone. About 5 minutes later, she was still banging on the glass door leading to the backyard. I reluctantly opened it and was met with a smack in the face. Remember, all this is happening while I'm holding my toddler in my arms. As soon as she realized what she just did, she apologized profusely, started crying, and tried to hug me. I pushed her away and told me to meet me at the dining table. I told my daughter to take care of the baby so her mom and I could chat quickly. I just kept it simple. I told her this was her only chance to even have a sliver of a chance of getting me back. If she messed up this talk, it was over on the spot. No lies, nothing. She kept trying to apologize and say it wasn't that serious. I reminded her that she not only messed me over, but she also could have easily done serious harm to our son by leaving him alone in the house like that. I then asked who, for how long, and had she cheated on me. She replied with her ex-boss, Daniel, 6 months, and she didn't answer the last one, so I kept on reminding her that this was her last chance. She then just nodded. I then asked her if they used protection. To this, she started crying and started begging me for forgiveness. She said she would block him then and there, would never contact him again, and could sleep with any woman I wanted from now on, yada yada. I guess Lisa heard the commotion and came downstairs. I told her to go back up, but she approached my wife and asked if I knew about Daniel. Up to this point, I was calm, but upon hearing this, I swear even I started tearing up. I asked Lisa if she'd known all along, and she said yes. At this point, I was full on crying, and I asked why she didn't tell me. She responded, because unlike you, Daniel buys me things I want without having to beg. I then asked her how she could possibly do this to her dad. She responded with the "you're not my real dad" crap. My wife screamed at her upon hearing what she said. At that point, I couldn't bear any of this anymore. I just grabbed my son and got into the car. My son and I are currently staying at my parents' house. I've basically been drinking myself to sleep every day. Thanks to the saint of a mother I have, my son is being taken care of right now. I'm beyond hurt. I've cancelled my ex-daughter's private school tuition and all her extracurricular activities, and I've contacted a divorce lawyer. He's going to serve my wife this Friday. My wife and Lisa have been blowing up my phone non-stop with apologies. I responded with, "Get a lawyer and tell that ungrateful thing of yours to start calling Daniel her dad. I'm disowning her." And then I blocked my wife. I didn't respond to Lisa, I simply blocked her. I guess my wife told our friends what she and Lisa did, and now they've been texting me non-stop. They understand how I feel, but believe I'm going too far by divorcing my wife without hearing her out. They also kept telling me that disowning Lisa was definitely going too far and she was only a kid and didn't understand what she was doing. I just can't get over the things she told me. I've worked my butt off to give my wife and daughter luxuries I could have only dreamed of as a kid, and this is how I get paid back. Lisa, a young teen, is old enough to understand that hiding her mom's affair is bad and definitely purposely used those words to hurt me. But a part of me believes that there is still hope. A few family counselling sessions later, we can return to living the life I once considered a fairy tale. I'm beyond destroyed by this whole situation. A part of me wants to see them burn in the bad place, but the other part of me believes there's still hope. Am I really going too far? Is there still hope? Am I the idiot for disowning my daughter and divorcing my wife? Not the idiot, but you need to stop drinking. It's game time and you need to be at your best. I'm sorry about your daughter's behaviour. Honestly, screw the friends who want you to listen to your cheater wife. I would have one more conversation with Lisa and tell her why you're leaving and how her actions hurt you. All of this, OP. Get sober, eat, sleep, talk to a lawyer, go get tested. DNA test your son. Although scary, you need the whole picture. Get sober. You need to be there for your son, so stop the drinking. And Lisa is of an age to know right from wrong. She and her mother have made their bed, they can lie in it now. I hate to say this, but Lisa is his daughter. He adopted her. Dude, everyone's the idiot here. I was a grown adult when I got pulled into my parents' affair, and I didn't immediately tell my other parent. That parent has never once blamed me for that. Your wife should not have brought your daughter into the affair. You're holding way too much anger at your young teen for acting like a young teen. Plus, claiming you adopted her but never referring to her as yours tells me all I need to know about why it was easy for her to like the new guy. Your wife sucks, but you never loved that little girl. Grow up and take care of your children. Bruh, she's old enough to understand cheating is bad. She only apologizes because OP has cancelled her private school tuition and all her extracurricular activities. She only saw OP as an ATM machine. Honestly, I'd be drinking out of celebration for the bullet I dodged. Wife laughing it up on the phone about cheating on you while your son sat wriggling in his own crap, taking her daughter on trips with this dude to be bought stuff and agreeing to keep it a secret from you. I mean, dude, forget this woman. That's how she's going to choose to bring up your kid. Zero respect for anyone or anything. I know the daughter is just a kid, but saying you're not her real dad and then saying she'd rather have the money? Find someone else. This girl and her daughter are straight poison. Find Daniel on social media and let his wife and kids know. Let her parents know. And remember this, neither your wife nor your daughter was sorry when you didn't know. My mother is religious. This happened when all of us were kids. She had an accident and she thinks it's a miracle she's alive. She threw herself into the religion. I want to make it clear that she hasn't pushed religion onto anyone else in the family. I think I only heard her talk about it 5 times in 30 years. She basically practices by herself. One habit she has is saying a prayer in her head before she eats. She'll just bow her head for a minute before she eats. My wife gets very annoyed by this. She isn't a fan of religions in general. Before, she made comments or gave dirty looks. My father talked to me about it, and it boiled down to he wouldn't allow his wife to be disrespected. I had the whole conversation with my wife later, and I thought she got the memo. Anyway, we had dinner last night. My mom was doing her prayer and my wife made a comment. She rolled her eyes and in an annoyed tone said, "She's at it again, doesn't she know it's not real?" My father came over, took her plate and told her to leave. He said he wouldn't have someone disrespect his wife. I told her to head out and I'd take an Uber home. When I got home, we got into a huge argument. She thinks I'm a jerk for not standing up for her and staying. I told her she was warned and keeping your mouth shut isn't hard. It's literally not hard to ignore her silent prayers before she eats. Am I the idiot for not leaving with my wife when she was kicked out of my parents' house? Not the idiot. I firmly believe in spouses before others, but there are limits, and this jumped way past the limit. Your wife sounds extremely childish. All she has to do is say nothing for a brief minute. It shouldn't be that difficult. Your father is right. There just needs to be more respect. Just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean you have any right to attack the people who do believe it, especially when they aren't shoving it down your throat. I'm not aggressively atheist, but I'm damn close. My boyfriend's parents are super religious and we often dine with them. I'm not a fan of it, but when it's time to hold hands and say grace, I bow my head and sing some random song in my head while Dad is saying grace. It takes a few moments and makes them happy. Damn, some folks need to grow up. I'd be over the moon if his parents prayed silently and didn't drag the rest of us into it. But from his parents' point of view, they're saving our souls, so I let them do it. I, 26 female, recently had twins with my husband Harry, 30. I love my babies so much, but the labour was a nightmare. It was extremely traumatic for my husband and me, and we've agreed that we're definitely not having any more kids. I laboured for 2 days, and we kept our families updated throughout the process. When they were finally able to visit, my parents and my in-laws came to see us. Everyone fussed over the babies, and my poor husband, who had only had about 4 hours of sleep for the whole 2 days, was napping. However, my dad sat by me first and held my hand for a bit. When I told him to go get some cuddles with the twins, he said, "I'm here to see my baby," meaning me. It was honestly so sweet, and I started tearing up. I didn't even realise how invisible I felt when my husband was sleeping, and my dad was there to make sure I was also being taken care of. He took me down to the hospital cafe and we had breakfast together while the babies were there with everyone else. I kept thinking about what my dad did for the next few days, and I decided to give my newborn son my father's name as his middle name. My husband was totally on board with this. However, this is where the problem began. We knew my father-in-law would be pretty angry at this. He always wanted a grandson named after him, but it's pretty clear he won't get one now. He has 2 sons, my husband and his younger brother, and my brother-in-law is gay and currently says he doesn't want to adopt kids in the future. My father-in-law is also one of those people who cares about bloodlines, so I don't think he'd want an adopted grandson named after him. Messed up, I know. My husband has a complicated relationship with his father, so he wasn't comfortable naming our son after him, but we agreed to give them the same initials so they'd both be AHD. He accepted this, but when he found out we were switching the middle name for my father, he lost his mind. He said that this was something he'd always wanted, and we were throwing it in his face by giving the baby my father's name as his middle name. I tried to explain why, but he cut me off and said that it was absurd to expect someone to check on me when there were babies that had just been born. My father shouldn't be rewarded for ignoring his grandchildren. I tried to explain that it was more than just the moment because my dad had been my best friend for my whole life, but he didn't want to hear it. Mother-in-law is saying we're idiots for doing this because my dad doesn't care about any grandchildren being named after him, but father-in-law has always wanted it. According to her, we're taking something away from him just because my dad chose to do something unusual, which to them was ignoring the babies until he was satisfied with me being okay. He did not ignore the kids. He got plenty of cuddles in when we got back from breakfast. My dad is honoured by our choice but thinks we shouldn't have done it because of what it means to father-in-law. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. So if you named your son after your father-in-law, you'd be doing so simply to appease an idiot. Not because he's good and kind and someone you want your child to emulate, but because he's a bully, accustomed to forcing others to do his bidding. And let's take that further. Assume you did name your son after him. Does it end there? Or does father-in-law feel he now exerts some influence and control over your son? Your in-laws sound awful, and they don't get a say in how you name your child. Honestly, OP did both of her children a favour by not naming them after the father-in-law. The poor kid with the name would be hounded and harassed to live up to his bloodline, and the other would be forever a reject. Also, don't give in to tantrums. You'll need this advice with your own children. Might as well start with father-in-law, LOL. Not the idiot, and I have fallen slightly in love with your dad. What a touching moment you shared, and I'm sorry your father-in-law is tainting it. I'm glad your husband is supporting you. I, 25 male, am recently engaged to my lovely fiancée, 25 female. We've been together for 4 years. We've started general wedding planning. Her family is much bigger than mine, and she wants more of a party-type wedding, with lots of music and dancing. My family is all a bit older than hers. She's the oldest sibling while I'm the youngest, and they aren't into big, loud weddings. They would prefer something quiet and more focused on socializing, and I would too. My fiancé said we could do an extended cocktail hour and/or start the reception later so there'd be more time for quiet socializing, or even start the whole wedding earlier in the day so it wouldn't go as late. She also suggested that we take our wedding photos before the ceremony so that we wouldn't have to miss cocktail hour to do them. I suggested that instead we find a venue with 2 separate rooms. That way her family could have a louder party in one and mine could have a quiet reception in the other. It would be in the same venue so each side could still go to socialize with each other. My fiancée said she actually really hates that idea. She feels like it defeats the purpose of a wedding, which is supposed to symbolize the union of 2 people and their families. She also said she doesn't want to do that because she worries I'll spend the entire reception with my family and that she'll have to choose between spending the night with me but ignoring her family, or being with her family but us basically being separate at our wedding. She also said she feels like the wedding we're planning is becoming less and less ours and more mine. She said this because she originally wanted a child-free, non-religious wedding, but compromised on a church ceremony with children allowed because that is what I want. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. I hate this idea too. Legitimately think it is awful. You are strong-arming this entire process to get what you want, which is more what you think your family wants. This wedding should be about what both of you want. Yeah, you aren't compromising at all, and you aren't hearing your fiancée very clearly tell you that she's aware you aren't compromising or even considering her as the person to plan this wedding with. I don't exactly understand what you want out of a reception, to be honest. You don't want it to be loud, but you want children involved. You don't want it to start earlier, and you don't want an extended cocktail time before the reception. It seems the only thing that would make you happy is 2 separate rooms. Your fiancé rightly points out that this would mean 2 events are going on. Where would you spend your time? How would anyone have any fun at all? Seriously, everyone is talking about his lack of compromise. How about the sheer insanity of 2 separate rooms for each family? This wedding is literally a candidate for the most outrageously stupid idea I've ever heard in my entire life, and I know a ton of idiots. It completely defeats the purpose of having a wedding reception.